Welcome to Talk Data to Me. My name is Natalie Takacs.
And I'm Catie Williams. Welcome to our first episode. Hopefully not our last.
On our podcast, we're going to be talking about all things data and analytics. Today on our first episode, we thought it'd be a good idea to introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about who we are, how we got here, and why we decided to start a podcast. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in. I think, Natalie, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I started my career in 2015. I actually started working for you in 2015. I got an internship at a large.
Oh my gosh, it's almost been 10 years, Natalie.
I know. Isn't that wild? So at a large construction company working in the technology side on the reporting team. So I have spent all of my time since.
Hold on, before you go too much further, I remember your interview and the project you were working on, like when you were coming in to start. Did you think that this is did you expect where you are today based on what you were looking into is where you would end up? Because wasn't it something related to trafficking? No.
Oh, right? So my
thesis?
university,
Is that right?
Well, my university got a grant to do research in human trafficking.
Yes, and it really left an impression on me, this project you were working on.
And so I was just kind of there. I wasn't actually working on the project, but my my advisor and one of my classmates was working on this project, and I was really interested in data and analytics. That kind of helped keep me in that program because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I went into college thinking I was going to be a dentist, and then I started jumping around to different programs within the university. And so that specific project I thought was so cool because it was going to impact so many people. And since they've impacted legislation in our state, and they've gained some national notoriety for their projects that they're doing and the research that they're doing around social network analysis with human trafficking.
Yeah, so really cool.
that totally brought me into the data space, and it kept me there. Well, the project that I was working on when I was in school is about women in STEM. So that's kind of where I started going, just because I feel like my whole time in school, I struggled with math for a long time. And people would always tell me, oh, it's okay, you're a girl. Girls aren't supposed to be good at math. Girls aren't good at math. And so I cringe hearing that now. I cringe that those words just came out of my mouth, but
but it's pretty commonplace. I mean, I remember the same, don't feel bad. It's normal.
It's okay. You're better at reading. I'm like, well, yes, I love to read, but I wanted to be in a STEM field, I knew, but it took a while to figure out how to get there. So yeah, isn't that wild? It's almost 10 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
But anyway, so Catie, how did you get into your role?
I mean, I would say I had something very similar in terms of college. I mean, high school, no idea what I wanted to do. I don't think. I mean, I was actually really good at math. I would tell you though that I definitely felt that I felt the stereotype about females, definitely not a lot of females in my classes, especially not when you're taking AP courses and things like that. But I went into college thinking I was pre-med, so kind of similar track as you, right? I thought I was going the medical route, and then I don't know, I got into the higher chem courses and realized I didn't have the passion for it, and which I do think is good. I'm not a very empathetic person, and I don't think I could handle the separation of the feelings and the impact to a person. I think that ended up working out really well for me because I think I'd bring a lot of that home every day. But I started pre-med, it just didn't seem to be going the right way. And then there was something about technology that really clicked for me. But truthfully, I mean, I'm a few years older than you. We're not going to share on this podcast our ages, but I am a little bit older than Natalie. But that degree, like a degree around data, did not exist. There were programming degrees. There were definitely like true computer science, computer engineering type of degrees, but there was nothing like a sweet spot around data. So I definitely didn't like have a passion around data in college. It wasn't until I got out of college, got my first job, and then got to be part of like we were migrating off of a, you know, like everybody had different systems and we were migrating onto one centralized system. And I started to see the challenges of not having centralized data, that I started to see the power of like what having, you know, data that is all brought together in one place, what that could do, how that could drive decisions. And I think I had, you know, not having the work experience and being a little bit naive, not realizing how much reliance in the past decisions had been made on people's experience, just like the tribal knowledge. It was very, very eye-opening to me. And I think it's very, and I'll go on all kinds of soapboxes and tangents, but it's just really interesting to me, not that employees are not valuable to an organization, because they are, but the way an employee is valuable has really changed as technology has come into play. And so before, an employee would be really valuable to an organization because they held all of this tribal knowledge, and you know, you couldn't get rid of someone or they couldn't leave because they knew all of the stuff that happened and there wasn't a good system that held it. Just a person held the information. And now we're seeing that that's no longer the case. And so employees are valuable in a different way. But I know when I first started, I thought that that was fascinating, that, you know, you'd have to call this one person to get the piece of information. And that was mind boggling to me. But so yeah, I think we have pretty similar backgrounds, and I have always been fascinated. I mean, in the construction and engineering space, we're not impacting lives, right? From like a medical perspective, or like the trafficking, like that's a fantastic example of how do you like really make an impact. But I also think, you know, the infrastructure and making buildings, all of that has an impact on our lives too. But it is, when you think of the art of the possible with data, like obviously I think I just got a little excited thinking about what you can do with data. And that is how I feel. And obviously that's why we're doing this podcast, is because it's a passion of both of ours, and we're excited to share some of the things that we think about and talk about on a daily basis.
Yeah, and to your point, right? Like in construction analytics, we're not saving lives every day, but there's something incredibly rewarding about somebody telling you that you have no idea how much providing this solution has helped me. It saves X number of hours a day or a week, and then you look at like on a grander scale, that's a lot of time per year.
Yeah.
So I think I do feel incredibly rewarded when I speak with folks and products that we work on help their day to day, which is something I didn't expect coming into technology. When I started my career, I thought, well, I'm too altruistic for this. This doesn't feel like a specific part of my bucket up. But I was surprised to hear those things and feel that sense of achievement and being able to help someone. But
yeah, that's a great way to put it. And there is something very tangible about data that's different. You know, like I think when I think about someone that's in construction, like how amazing it must be to like drive by and see your work and that feeling of pride that they must feel. But I feel like I can also say that I have this immense feeling of pride knowing that I can help drive decisions. And you know, I think we're discrediting ourselves a little bit about in the industry, you know, like safety information. I mean, our industry is actually extremely dangerous, right? I mean, obviously most construction and engineering firms are putting such a, you know, priority on safety. It's their top priority, everybody getting home safe. And so much of the information that we have can help identify leading indicators and things like that. So I guess we shouldn't completely discredit it as it not having an impact, because it definitely can, and it does. And hopefully organizations are looking at that and seeing how they can help prevent safety incidents from happening. But I mean, yeah, it's just like you said, I mean, yeah, it's not the same as like finding a cure for cancer, but it definitely still like scratches that I've accomplished something. I'm making a difference. And so, yeah, I agree with that.
That's a good point. So, we have the power with technology to impact the safety of a job. It's incredible to me that technology, and this is across industries, isn't actually being fully leveraged. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we still run into scenarios where there's so many manual processes. Do you have any crazy stories? Any outrageous data experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm sure I could come up with a lot over my lengthy career. Again, I'm not going to give my direct age, not that it's super old or anything, but yeah, I think, because we were talking, about examples to provide during this podcast, and I was telling you a story, an interesting or kind of an outrageous example that I was thinking about is a project I was working on where we wanted to visualize some data in a new way. Well, it was like a tabular style report. So like every month someone got it in a PDF, and we were going to make it like visual, right, in a dashboard, I think in Tableau at the time. And so we needed to get the historical information, but the only way to get it was off of PDFs. So there was no like system that tracked the history anywhere. I mean, like the system that existed only had the to-date information. It didn't actually have any snapshot or history. And so if you wanted to know how a project or like a roll up of projects had performed, you would have to go to this PDF. So you'd have to look up the PDF, go and scan that PDF for the information. And at the time we were doing it, there really wasn't a good way. Today, if you were to do that, you would just go do a PDF scraper, right? You could write a program. It'd be really simple, pull all the information off. But like it was long enough ago that we're talking about that didn't exist. So we had to manually key all the information off of these PDFs into another system so that we could start to load the history, track the history. But then there were all these other complications. So the grouping of projects had changed over time too. And the only way to know that was by talking to this one person in another department who would tell you that, like, these two, groupings had broken apart, or these two had been consolidated, or like now these three were this one. And then what made the whole thing worse, and I didn't share this part with you, Natalie, is it was like me and these three people doing it, and we had to have this thing ready by like the next morning. And we realized that the guy doing the the guy doing the data entry, like we each divvied it up, right? I mean, we're talking a lot of jobs, a lot of months. He had been transposing all of the numbers. So we realized like all the data's wrong. So then it was like this mad dash to, we gotta, but I just was baffled coming out of college, which again, I'm not from a time where everything's digitized. That I would say that was false, but I had my first cell phone at 16. I know kids these days get them a lot earlier, but I had my first cell phone at 16. I made a mobile app in college. I definitely expected coming into the workforce things to be much more technology driven. So for me, it was just shocking that this is how we're doing things. This is how decisions are made. This is the only way to get this information. And then to think, three people are keying everything by hand, and then, oh my gosh, somebody made one error. And it was like the kind of error that you built off of it, right? Because we had a bunch of calculations that went off of things. And so if you make one error, it was like a ripple impact. And it blew my mind. So I don't know if you have any, or like, I know you've seen books of reports, and I'm sure some of that has shocked you to see that people are looking at 100-page reports and things like that.
Yeah, and so what surprises, there are a few things that surprise me about scenarios like the one you were in, and that element of the information is obviously important because they want to look back at it, they want to have it in a system. So we're trusting a human to put that information in the system so that we can refer back to it or report on it monthly. That to me just is in and of itself so surprising.
To clarify, that didn't end up being the final solution. I should definitely put like a nice asterisk however you say it. That wasn't the final solution, but in that moment of like, hey, we're showing you this is the future of doing visualization. That was the way to get it done in that moment, right? A more elegant solution was devised later on to capture the history. But no, I agree. I mean, because we keyed it all in, then we had to go and validate it, and check your numbers. Yeah, that's gonna, like, maybe we should offer some tips as part of this podcast, but like, check your work. Always double check your work. As a reporting person, always check your work. You've probably keyed in something wrong. I've definitely learned that the hard way. 10 times at least.
We've all been there, and you know, it's obviously that's not a specific scenario to what you were doing. I mean, this happens everywhere, all over the place. I mean, for instance, my husband, he manually
also in the industry.
Yes, also he's a mechanical engineer. And this is outside of construction, but he does our monthly like budgeting, and he doesn't like the format that you can export transactions from our bank or our credit card statements. So he manually enters information into a spreadsheet from our statements every month, and it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, you need to help him out. I mean, he's got some skills to help him out too.
He always says, you know, well, if you have a better way to do this, let me know. And you know,
like, I've got at least 5 better ways.
Yeah. Well, and I just haven't gotten into it, but
sorry, Alex.
It's on my to-do list. It's on my to-do list to eventually address that. But I think about these things, and it's just such a very, it's a very prevalent activity, not just in construction, not just at specific companies, but it happens everywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, we know how much Excel is used, right? I mean, not that I don't know that we were really hoping to talk about the use of Excel in this episode. I think we'll definitely cover tools and things like that more later, because Excel isn't going anywhere. It's used so much, but the case in point, it's so error prone. I mean, that's a reason why it really shouldn't be used at scale in an enterprise, because it is full of it's just full of errors.
There's a time and a place. But one other thing that actually surprised me, some of my colleagues at one point were working on a time tracking reporting system that was based on badging in and badging out. And at this point in time, that wasn't a very common thing. And as someone similar to you, I grew up with kind of a half technology childhood, half non-technology childhood. I was shocked that was kind of cutting edge at that time. Yeah. That information just wasn't captured. I think to that point, one of the biggest surprises to me is that information isn't just captured. It takes effort, it takes strategy, it takes architecture to capture information. And so I think the nuances and the complexity of information capture and historical reporting and all of the things that come with that was kind of something that had surprised me, because I thought it just happened until I entered the industry.
Well, I think that's like a misconception about the construction industry as a whole, is how complex the business processes are. And again, it's like, you know, you compare the type of things you can do for yourself technically, like there's an app for that I can do this personally, right? And then you try to translate that into your professional world. And I don't think this is unique to just the construction industry. I just mean, I think that there's this belief that, you know, like it's a project, right? It has the same thing. You get a quote, you do the estimating process, and then you plan out the work, you know, you come up with the plan, and then the work gets started, and then you hand it over to the owner. But it's like the contract process and all these things. I mean, there's so much complexity there that I think it's minimized quite a bit. Which is then why, from a technical perspective, it's very hard to have a solution. It's not the same as, you know, just going to the store and purchasing something, which is a very repeatable thing that you do every time the same way, right? Like, I mean, it's very rare that you have a deviation from the standard process when you go to the store and you purchase something. I mean, yeah, every once in a while you get some weird, thing that requires the manager to come over and say, oh, I've never seen this before. But most of the time it's like rip and repeat, same thing. But that's not the same thing in construction, right? Every single project has a different owner. It's got different contract requirements, different location. I mean, right, all of the variables are so different. And I think that gets missed a lot. But that's also what's so exciting about it from like a data perspective is that, I mean, it's a very challenging environment to interact with. But technology wise, it also makes it very tough to support when you can't just bucket everything into this 80%, which is typically what these solutions do. They say, oh, we're going to support 80% of the use cases, the 20% will figure it out. I mean, and that's hard in this space.
Yeah, I would agree. That's why it is so impactful when someone gives feedback that we're helping save time or we nailed it. Yeah. Just because of the complexity that we're up against and the different businesses, even different disciplines, right? It's so, the complexity gets so granular that it's almost impossible to account for.
Well, and I mean, we could go into the weeds, but I think also the margins are pretty small. And so, you think about, you're really trying to manage, you've got to stay at a level of granularity because it's very easy to quickly have cost overruns and things like that, right? And to lose your margin. And again, I mean, when you look at some of these really complex projects and you think about when something starts to slip away from a schedule perspective, and then you've got all this staff, or if you don't have your materials when you need them, right? I mean, everything has this massive ripple impact when you're looking at some of the size and the dollars on the line for these projects. Yeah. So
oh yeah,
there's a lot of, just like you said, a lot of room to make a very large impact, which is why what we get to do in our data and analytics space,
yeah,
makes it really fun, because just like you said, it's like if we can shave an hour, we can shave 15-20 minutes, we can make it so somebody doesn't have to go line by line down on a cost report. I mean, that's a great thing. If we can put the information in front of someone and say, this is what you should care about, don't care about those other things, they're not making a difference. I mean, that's the type of thing that we're trying to do, and that's what makes it rewarding and makes us want to come to work. At least for me. I think the same for you. We talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there was another time somebody on a project was telling us about how something we had built for them, they implemented, and it was allowing people to work closer to 8 hours a day, closer to whatever they were allocated for the day, instead of working so much over that they were able to go home and be with their families in the evening. And that as a young person, that was early on in my career, that really solidified it for me, because when I started at my in my internship, I didn't know if this was going to be a long-term fit. I was just a little confused about where I wanted to go, but I started to hear those kinds of stories, and that's what kept me wanting to get deeper into the data and analytics space within construction, is that, to your point, exactly how you said, there's so much opportunity. So much opportunity.
That makes a good segue for another topic that we wanted to talk about today on our podcast, which is the opportunity for getting more girls and women involved, not necessarily just in construction engineering, but overall in STEAM, which the acronym used to be STEM, but now they've added the A, which stands for arts. And so I know both Natalie and I feel really passionate about, anything that we can do to help encourage girls and women to be interested in a STEAM field. And, we talked a little bit both about our feelings around math and the stereotypes, perceptions around girls and math at the beginning of the podcast. But it's definitely something we'll talk about a lot on the podcast. And anything, like I said, anything we can do to help encourage more interest is definitely something we're both very interested in.
I think it's really important that we can be representation. One of the things that I remember from growing up is that I wanted to be a dentist. I saw female dentists. That's just kind of the representation I could see myself. So being a female in technology and specifically the data and analytics space, I think it's really great that I have the opportunity to be that representation to some girl somewhere.
Thanks for joining us on our first episode of Talk Data to Me. Some things to look forward to that we plan to do on future episodes are guest speakers. We are going to talk about tools. We will definitely dive into some more construction and engineering data topics specifically. We'll probably talk about change management, some trends in the industry. We'll definitely hit on machine learning and AI, since that's definitely very hot right now. ChatGPT and generative AI. What else, Natalie? What did I miss that we'll cover in our on our podcast?
Just general data topics that aren't necessarily specific to the construction industry, challenges we've seen, things that are really prevalent in just the data space right now. Being that we are involved in construction and analytics, so we're at an interesting crossroads of two industries. So the topics that we talk about will probably span both. So stay tuned. We've got a lot planned.
Yeah, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you at our next episode.